I grew up in the kind of place where the trees press in so close they steal the sunlight just by 4 p.m. Our cabin sat rotting at the end of a mud-choked road in the Pennsylvania backwoods. The kind of place where you learn real quick that silence isn't peaceful. It's just the woods at night. Nothing but darkness and towering trees. Vesper was the only friend out here. We'd been scaring each other since we were kids, jumping from behind trees, leaving animal bones on each other's porches, the usual backcountry bullshit. That night, I was gonna nail him good. My bedroom window faced the tree line, and I'd left it open just enough to hear the engine die. The back door opened without a sound, because I had used WD-40'd the hinges last week, specifically for this. The air outside was cold that night. I ducked behind the rusted-out wood stove we never used, waiting. Vesper always cut through the trees instead of taking the path dumbass thought it made him stealthy. Any second now, he'd come stumbling through the underbrush, and I'd leap out and a branch snapped. Not the sharp crack of someone stepping on dead wood. This was slow, deliberate, like whatever broke it was savoring the sound. I squinted into the blackness between the pines. At first, nothing, then movement, a shape darker than the shadows around it. Too tall to be Vesper, too wrong to be human. It didn't walk. It lurched, like its joints didn't bend right. 1 second it was 10 yards away, the next it was halfway to the cabin, moving in jagged bursts like a broken film reel. My lungs locked up. This wasn't a prank. Vesper couldn't move like that even if he tried. Then it hit the window well. The sound, Christ. Not a thud, not a crash. A wet, meaty slap, like a side of beef dropped on concrete. Followed by this noise. Not a growl, not a scream. Something in between, gurgling up from a throat that shouldn't exist. A sound that made my teeth ache. I didn't wait to see it crawl out. I was back inside before the echo died, slamming the door so hard the frame splintered. The lock clicked just as I heard gravel shift outside. Not footsteps. Just weight. Like something big moving. I took the upstairs 3 at a time, heart pounding in my chest. My bedroom door slammed against the wall when I kicked it shut, leaving a dent. Outside, the crunching stopped. The silence was worse. I pressed against the window, my breath fogging the screen. The moon was yellow smear behind the clouds, but it was enough to see the shape standing directly below me. Motionless, head tilted up, watching. I didn't sleep that night, just waited for morning to come. The sunlight didn't make the cabin feel safe. I waited until full noon before stepping outside, a kitchen knife shoved in my back pocket. I saw something black and sticky smeared across the window well. It wasn't blood or oil, thicker than both, with clumps like spoiled milk. And it reeked like rotting guts left in the sun. Vesper showed up around noon, looking confused when I yanked him inside. Jesus! Vesper threw his hands up. What the hell wrong with you? I didn't lower the blade. You sure you didn't see anything last night? He rolled his eyes. That got his attention. His smirk disappeared. I was sleeping. Jared gave me a ride home, and I went straight to bed. Why? Vesper left when I wouldn't stop staring at the tree line. I jerked my chin at the window well. He took one look at the ooze and went pale under his tan. That ain't right, he muttered. No shit. We didn't talk about the footprints, though. The ones leading from the window well into the trees. Too big to be human, with claws that left gouges in the dirt. I didn't tell him about the sounds. How, at 3 a.m., something had scraped against the cabin siding. Not like an animal scratching. Like fingers dragging slowly, deliberately, from the foundation all the way up to my windowsill. How the temperature had dropped so fast my breath fogged in July. How the thing outside had started whispering. It was worse. Oh God. Vesper thinks I'm crazy now. But it never happened again. I still don't know what I saw that night in the dark. It wasn't anything I'd never seen before. Whatever it was, I couldn't make sense of it. After that night, I started going to bed early and never looked outside after dark. What I saw in those woods remains a mystery. It was a 3-day solo hike to Black Pine Lake, deep in the Montana backcountry. No cell service, no trails past the first 10 miles. Just me, my pack, and the kind of silence you can't find anywhere people exist. The first day was hell. Trailheads started easy enough, winding through dense pines and crossing a few shallow creeks. But by midday, the path vanished, swallowed by deadfall and thick underbrush. My boots sank into mud that smelled like decay, and the mosquitoes swarmed in black clouds, biting through my shirt. By the time I reached the lake, my legs burned and my shoulders ached under the weight of my pack. But damn, the view was worth it. I set up camp on a rocky outcrop near the shore, far enough from the tree line to see anything coming. My tent went up quick, my fishing rod even quicker. I just cast my line when I heard the first shout. It came from across the lake, a man's voice, sharp and angry, bouncing off the water. Then another voice, higher, pleading. A woman's. I froze. This wasn't some normal kind of noise. This was in anger. The shouting escalated. Then a scream. Not fear. Pain. The kind that claws its way out of someone's throat. My gut twisted. I reeled in my line fast, listening. Silence. Then rustling in the trees. Someone was running. The women. She burst into my camp straight, barefoot and bleeding. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dirt and blood. She stumbled, gasping, before locking eyes with me. Please, her voice cracked. They're going to kill me. I didn't think. I grabbed her arm and yanked her behind me, scanning the trees. Nothing moved. Who's after you? I hissed. 2 men, she panted. We were camping. Friends, I thought. But one of them, he's obsessed with me. When I said no, he snapped. The other one just laughed. Her hands shook. A deep gash ran down her forearm, still oozing red. They have knives, she whispered. I didn't have time to question her. I shoved her toward my tent. Get in. Stay quiet. She crawled inside, and I threw my sleeping bag over her. Then I grabbed my fishing knife and stepped out just as 2 men emerged from the trees. The man was tall, wiry, with a face like a hatchet, all sharp angles and cold eyes. And the other was bigger, built like a bouncer, his grin missing a tooth. Then the man demanded, "You seen a girl run through here?" I kept my voice steady. Nope. The guy that looked like a bouncer flicked to my tent. That yours? Yeah. Mind if we check? My fingers tightened around the knife. Yeah, I do. The man's smile dropped. Look, buddy, we're just trying to find our friend. She's hurt. Scared. Then why is she running from you? Silence. The other guy took a step forward. Open the tent. I didn't want to pull it. I carry a .44 Magnum. When I'm this deep in the wild, not for people, for bears, in case. But when one of the guys reached for his belt, where a hunting knife hung, I didn't hesitate. The pistol cleared my holster in one motion. In a loud, sharp voice. Next step, I said, and I put a hole in you. They froze. Those guys' hands went up, but their eyes burned. You're making a mistake. Back up, they said. We'll find her. And you. Then, the women, out of fear, screamed from the tent. One guy lunged. I shot him, but I didn't aim to kill. The bullet hit a tree behind them with a crack like thunder. They flinched. Next, one's in your head, I snarled. The 2 men grabbed the arm of each other. Let's go. They backed into the trees, but his last words slithered after me. "We'll kill you." The second they were gone, I tore open the tent. The woman was curled up, shaking. "We have to move. Now." I packed in under a minute, then grabbed her arm. "Can you run?" She nodded. We didn't follow the trail. Too exposed. Instead, we cut through dense brush, our clothes snagging on thorns, our boots slipping on wet rock. Twice, the woman's knees gave out halfway down the ridge. I caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cold, her lips tinged blue. Shock. I just hauled her up and kept moving. We didn't stop for hours. We hit a ranger station by midnight. The cops came fast, took her statement, then mine. They combed the area but found nothing, just blood on the rocks where she'd fallen. The sheriff clapped me on the shoulder. "You saved her life." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt hunted. I never went back to that place again because those men were never caught by the police. I'm certain they were looking for me one last time to kill me. After all, I was the one who saved that girl that night, and I had no idea what their true intentions were. I had unknowingly stumbled into the middle of their plan. Since then, I always carry a gun. It's a necessity, not a choice. I don't know if they'll ever find me, but I never wanted to return to that spot again. Every summer, since I was a kid, I'd spend a week at my grandfather's cabin in the Ozark Mountains. The place had been in our family for decades, a weathered, one-room shack tucked deep in the hills, surrounded by miles of untouched forest. Most days, I'd take my dirt bike out on the old logging trails, carving through the trees like I owned them. But that day in 2022, I rode too far. It was late June, the air thick with humidity, like wet paper. I'd just turned 19, and after 2 years of college, I needed this. I started easy, following the familiar paths I'd known since I was 12. The usual loops, Miller's Ridge, Dead Man's Curve, the old quarry road. But by noon, I got cocky. I wanted to push further. I found the new trail. It wasn't on any map. Just a narrow break in the underbrush, barely wide enough for my tires. The ground was packed hard, like something had been using it for years. I hesitated for half a second before gunning the engine and plunging in. I rode for maybe 40 minutes, the trees closing in around me. The GPS on my phone had crapped out miles back, no signal this deep. No problem. I'd been riding these woods forever. I could always backtrack. Then the silence hit. No birds. No cicadas. Not even the rustle of leaves. Just the growl of my bike and my own breathing inside my helmet. I slowed and killed the engine. The silence felt wrong, unnatural. This had never happened before, and I had never felt this way. Then, suddenly, I noticed something. It stood dead center on the trail, 20 feet ahead. I thought it was a normal buck until I really looked. It was massive, taller than any deer had a right to be. Its shoulders hunched like it carried weight. Its fur was patchy, raw in places, like something had been peeling it off. But the worst part was its face. Black eyes. No shine, no reflection. Just hollow pits. And the antlers, Jesus Christ. They weren't smooth. They twisted like gnarled roots, curling too far back, too wrong. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. My stomach dropped. This wasn't fear. This was recognition. Some deep, animal part of my brain screaming, "You shouldn't be here." I wrenched the handlebars, kicking the bike back to life. The rear tire skidded in the dirt as I spun around. Behind me, branches snapped. I didn't look back. I just went. The trail wasn't the same. I'd only ridden in a straight line, but now the path twisted, forks appearing where there'd been none. My own tire tracks were gone. I don't know how, but somehow it happened exactly as it did. Then I noticed something strange. A doe, standing frozen beside the trail. A fox, rigid as a statue. Even a black bear, half hidden in the brush, all of them watching me with the same empty stare. Not running, not afraid, just waiting. When I finally hit the main trail again, my hands were shaking. I almost missed it, the tree. A massive oak, right at the trailhead, carved into the bark, deep and fresh, like it had been done minutes ago. Leave and never return again. Just those words, slashed into the wood with something sharp. I revved the engine, ready to bolt, then froze. The deer was back. Not on the trail. Not even on the ground. It stood on the air. Our eyes locked. Then between one blink and in seconds, it was gone. My grandparents didn't notice anything off when I got back. Grandpa just laughed at my muddy clothes. Hell of a ride, huh? I forced a grin. Yeah, hell of a ride. I didn't tell my grandparents. I searched online, hoping to find stories of someone who had seen what I had. Maybe I wasn't the only one. But I found nothing, and the locals wouldn't talk about it. They just nodded and said, the woods take what they want. I used to think that was just superstition, but after that, I never went deep into the woods again.